Hey everybody, welcome into The Spread, NESN.com's football picks podcast. I'm NESN.com's Mike Cole, joined as always by Ricky Doyle. And on the line from, I'm assuming, sunny California, Andre Khatchaturian.
Hey everybody, what's going on? Happy New Year!
Happy New Year, Andre.
Happy new decade!
Yeah, it's just a fresh start, if you will.
I expect this is the
you
first.
can say that about every day, though.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I imagine this is the first of many Happy New Years from you, Andre. I know where you stand on the issue of how long into the new year you can actually say it.
I usually like to go up until February. Like, if you haven't seen someone for a while, you can say Happy New Year to them. I don't think there's an issue with that.
You have a longer leash than most, I would say.
Yeah.
We're 40 hours.
It's January 2nd. I could say Happy New Year today.
We're 40 hours into this ish, and I'm already sick of it.
Well, I explained earlier. I haven't had to write the date yet.
Yeah,
and that's usually that's the game changer.
Which makes sense. We've kind of mentioned this. There's not a whole lot of times you write it.
No, my penmanship sucks now.
I believe it.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Now that we've got the penmanship discussion out of the way, let's get on to what we're all really here for, which is to make against the spread picks for football games, specifically NFL football games, specifically Wild Card Weekend. The playoffs are upon us. We have 4 games this week. Some would call this, I would say, the second best week of the NFL season, perhaps the third if you want to include conference championship. But we got 4 games, 2 each day. If you really want to, you can post up on your couch about 4:30 Saturday afternoon and really not leave for the rest of the weekend, which is what we're looking to do here. I would say one important thing, maybe postpone those New Year's resolutions a few more weeks. I think that's the thing. You can't really, especially if you want to do something diet-based, you want to cut down on the booze, whatever you want to do. It's tough to do that right when you jump into the NFL playoffs.
It really should be post-Super Bowl. You know?
Yes,
that's
I agree.
That's something the area.
I think that's what I'm going to operate under. I think that's what I'm going to do. At least
just keep moving the goalposts.
Or if you want to make an exception, you can just say, Monday through Friday, new year, new me. Once the weekend rolls around, I still gotta get through football season.
I mean, that's how it usually ends up anyway.
Right? I agree. Yeah, exactly.
January ends, and then you settled in. And I do have records, by the way, for not just this year, for the last 4 years. If you wanna,
go nuts.
The last 4 years.
Yeah, Ricky, you won this year, 130 wins. I got 122, and Mike, you finished last place with 121. Also,
third place.
Overall, though, I went and compiled the records for the last 4 seasons, ever since we started doing this, 2016, 17, 18, and 19. And it's crazy, man. Ricky, you lead the way, 493, 487, and 33. I'm dead 500, 490, and 490. And Mike, you're 4 games under 500, 488, 492, which is wild. It's basically 50%. Vegas knows what they're doing. It just blows my mind how it's amazing like that.
It is. It's crazy that we're all. I mean, essentially, when you're dealing with 1,000 games or whatever it is, or 900 games as we are there, 1,000. Yeah, excuse me. We're all 50%.
Yeah.
We're all 50-50, and the fact that we're all in the same exact neighborhood in the span of 6 games is nuts.
And you go through your weeks where you'll win 4 of the games,
right? Yeah.
And then the next week you'll win 12 games, and somehow water finds its level.
It's nuts. Do you have a thought, Andre? No.
No, I mean,
Your silence speaks volumes.
Yeah,
let's
you're
get
about
to the picks.
Let's get into it.
I was just gonna say, might as well just flip a coin.
It's a good point. You should probably try that this week.
So what we're basically telling you is that all this is useless.
Yeah, I was gonna say
you're just gonna be 500 anyways.
All right, let's start the path to 500. Saturday afternoon, 4:35 p.m. The Buffalo Bills, who are a wild card team, will head on the road to take on the Houston Texans. Texans, the winner of the AFC South. This line opened at Houston minus 3.5. It's been bet down to 2.5. It's what we will roll with. Last time I checked, it looked like about 2/3 of the cash is on Buffalo, but only a little more than half of the tickets. So the sharps seem to like the Bills here. Let's see, the total set at 42.5. Weather not an issue in Houston. Ricky, who do you like here?
The only thing worse than my penmanship is the Texans' defense.
That's bad.
It is 26th in DVOA according to Football Outsiders. That's the worst among the playoff teams. The next worst being Seattle, which is all the way up to 18th. Allowing an NFL worst 6.1 yards per play. Only the Cardinals have allowed more yards per drive than the Texans. The Bills, meanwhile, very well in that regard. 4th fewest yards allowed per drive. It's just, I just don't really have a lot of faith in this Texans defense to step up. Maybe the J.J. Watt's return gives them some sort of emotional boost, but I don't know how effective he's going to be getting back into the swing of things. So I just see this being an instance where, Josh Allen makes a few plays with both his arms and his legs. It turns into, I think if you're Buffalo, you want to turn this into a little bit of a rock fight. And I just think ultimately that favors the team with the better defense. So I like the Bills on this one.
I like the Bills as well, Ricky. Josh Allen, since he threw 3 picks against the Patriots in their first meeting, he has 17 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. His completion percentage isn't great, but he's learning how to protect the football. And Deshaun Watson, in his last 10 games, 15 touchdowns, 11 picks. He's being a little more reckless, especially against the Bills defense that's so strong in so many facets of the game. Bills also 9-5-2 against the spread this year. One of the best marks in the league. And since week 11, the Texans have allowed more than 100 rushing yards 6 times, and they've lost the turnover battle 5 out of 7 times in those 7 games. So they're giving up a lot of rushing yards, and Singletary, he's come out of nowhere in the second half. He's fantastic for the Bills. And what else do I have to add? I feel like we agreed with a lot of what we had to say, Ricky. I guess I'll let Mike say something, because I don't want to repeat some of his stuff he's going to say.
That is the way it works.
Very proactive approach.
Yeah. I'll also take the Bills here, which actually, one thing I do not like, I will get this out of the way, is that the Bills, and we've talked about this at points this year, really haven't beaten anybody. They have a strength of victory percentage of 363, which, according to a quick look at the internet, is second lowest among all of the teams in the playoffs. Only Minnesota beat up on worse teams this year, whereas the Texans 488, which is tops in the AFC and is actually tops of the entire NFC. So the Texans have beaten some good teams this season. The Bills have not, so that's something to keep in mind. That being said, I kind of have to just look at this from the matchup standpoint, and a lot of it comes down to we get into this time of year. Injuries are a huge thing. This week, we've had coaches already come out and declare players good to go. We have players declare themselves good to go. If you're going to play, you're feeling confident about your chances. But you look at Houston, Will Fuller. I think Bill O'Brien made this announcement. Yes, Bill O'Brien made the announcement Thursday afternoon that Will Fuller is a game-time decision, which doesn't inspire a whole lot of confidence. He's been dealing with a groin issue. That's not something that just magically goes away either. Even if he does play, it feels like he's going to be hobbled. And you look at the stats, per ESPN, I thought this was really telling. When they have Fuller, when he's good and he's healthy, he's on the field, they went 8-3, scoring 26.3 points per game and passing for nearly 300 yards per game. All right, so without him, they are 2-3, averaging just under 20 points and 158.3 passing yards per game. He really is just a huge part of their passing offense. If they don't have him, that really kind of limits the options and allows teams to key in on DeAndre Hopkins and kind of get creative with their coverages there. Especially if you got a guy like Tre'Davious White who can either maybe do the Patriots thing where you double Hopkins and put White on whoever else you want, whether it's Kenny Stills or whomever. Maybe do that. But it might not even matter. Also, I saw this on ESPN. Buffalo allowed 9 touchdowns and 5 interceptions this season on throws of 20-plus yards. Or excuse me, 9. It's not 9 touchdowns. They're the only team not to allow a touchdown on a throw of 20-plus yards or more. So they're really good at taking away the big play, which feels like a pretty important part of the Houston offense. So
feels like that's what it is.
Yeah, you're right. And I also have questions about Bill O'Brien. I mean, in the playoffs, just 1-3 straight up, 1-3 against the spread. And you got McDermott come in, who I've been on record as saying I really like in years past. And Josh Allen, we got to see it in the playoffs. That seems to be the big issue with people, picking against Buffalo here. But on the road for his career, I think this is for his career. Yeah, 9-2-2 against the spread. As an underdog, 10-5-2 against the spread, and as a road dog, 7-2-2 against the spread. So some value with a Josh Allen-led team so far in his career.
I think that the Texans are a team that I hate them when they're favorites. Right there, the 1-5-1 against the spread when they're favored this year. Whereas the Bills, on the other hand, are a team that when I'm catching points to them, I like. They got blown out in one game against the Eagles in October, but other than that, sure maybe they haven't beaten great competition, but they've been in every game. I mean, you've had the 2 losses to the Patriots, which it really could have gone either way. They hung tough with Baltimore, had the one loss to the Browns. So it's just like, there's not a lot of shame in those losses. No. I mean, it's not like they got steamrolled. So
2.5, not a big number.
No.
I think I would, if I'm putting a bet on this, I'm sprinkling on the Bills money line or just
100%,
going straight on the money. 100%. Yeah.
I also think if you talk about the Texans, also Mike, I'm really glad I didn't continue talking because the next thing I was going to say was the Will Fuller thing.
Yeah.
And then you really hammered that point home. It was good chemistry between us three. Also, I just want to add Josh Allen, scrambling quarterback.
Yeah.
The third most rushing yards among quarterbacks this year. That kind of took me by surprise. Lamar Jackson number 1, and then Kyler Murray number 2, and then Josh Allen number 3. And the Texans allowed the 7th most rushing yards to quarterbacks this year, so they're not really good against mobile quarterbacks.
Interesting. Did they play Baltimore? I mean, I feel like the number.
They did. But I mean, a lot of the teams in the top of the rankings of that list played against Baltimore, including AFC North teams like the Browns and Bengals who played them.
Right. That's a
twice.
good point. That's it. Yeah, they got smoked by Baltimore too. 40. Oh, that's right. That game. In ball, they never had a chance. 41-7. Jackson ran for 79 yards, including a 39-yard run. So, yeah, maybe Allen gets loose and breaks one off here. I think if I'm not mistaken, Buffalo, really good red zone defense as well. So, if you can cut down on points there. Yeah, it's just low-scoring game. To Ricky's point, you maybe take the points. So, All right. Let's move to Saturday night. I think this is the most intriguing game of the weekend, and I would be hard-pressed to find a lot of disagreement, I would imagine. You have the Tennessee Titans, one of the AFC's wild card teams, heading to Gillette Stadium in Foxborough, Massachusetts, to take on the New England Patriots. The Patriots, winners of the AFC East, but as everybody saw, just a woeful collapse in Week 17 against a miserable Dolphins team, a game that costed the Patriots a much-needed bye. Real banged-up New England team, about as far from invincible as it feels like they've been going into the playoffs in a long time. This is the first time they played in Wild Card Weekend since 2009, if I'm not mistaken, or 2010, if you want to call it that, when they lost to Baltimore, the Ray Rice game, as we all remember. It looks like the weather is going to be miserable as well. We've got rain all day. I think it maybe lightens up as the day goes on into the night, but it's going to be cold, raw, rainy. Not a good night to try to tackle Derrick Henry. But it looks like right now 47% of the cash is on Tennessee, 57% of the tickets on the Patriots. Let's see. Open at Patriots 5.5. We're down to 5 points. Ricky, who do you got?
I will take the Titans in this one.
Taking the points.
I am taking the points. I'm trying to figure out where the Patriots have a mismatch working in their favor, and I can't really find one.
Well, I mean, in terms of, are you talking about a matchup like an offense versus defense, or a position?
Yeah.
Because what about quarterback?
I mean,
okay, all right,
that's a toss-up.
Sure.
I don't know
that's
if
fair.
we can really go either way with that. And I am putting some stock into the familiarity aspect of it with Mike Vrabel coming in here. I mean, we've seen that the Patriots 9 losses the past 2 seasons, 4 against old members of the organization. Obviously, Vrabel being one of them. A game that I had the privilege of sitting through in Tennessee.
Right, it's Nashville, yeah.
Brian Flores, Bill O'Brien, Matt Patricia. And I just Titans defensive coordinator Dean Pease. He's traditionally
good point,
stepped up against them. I think his defense has been 3-3 against them. Also, just even on the field, somebody like Logan Ryan, the ability to take away Julian Edelman in the slot, who's also hobbled right now. I think something's up with Brady. I do think that elbow is a real thing. I think that's a real problem.
Or maybe a foot too.
Maybe a foot. Yeah, ankle, running up and down the sidelines. That was sort of a weird optic.
He will say, we'll get this point in, he wore different cleats last week.
Oh, there you go.
Was seen running up and down the field. He says he's going back to his old cleats.
Interesting. Week, so. Well, I don't think it's going to matter.
Yeah, I don't know.
I just think that this Titans team it feels like a team that could punch you in the mouth, particularly out of the gate. And if that's the case, I think this is going to be a dogfight. Sure.
I have to strongly disagree with you, Ricky, and I've never disagreed with you more about anything ever until this moment. Look. Can we stop talking about that Week 17 loss? Maybe Brady and the Patriots aren't going to wake up for a Week 17 game against the Miami Dolphins where the home field advantage in a bye week is on the line. Maybe they don't care about it as much anymore.
I've never disagreed with you more.
Yeah. So Andre, I just want to interject real quick. Then there's some sort of issue in that locker room then, because Bill Belichick said that was a playoff game. So they went into that supposedly treating it like a playoff game and got smoked.
Okay, I'm thinking that these are human beings at the end of the day.
Oh,
and
good
these
point.
Are guys who've been in Super Bowls, AFC championships, big games. A Week 17 game against the Dolphins at home isn't going to wake them up. We talk about trap games all the time in the middle of the regular season. Week 7, the Patriots go take on the Bengals. Week 8, they have to play the Rams. Oh, maybe it's a trap game situation. Why can't Week 17 have been a trap game
How
situation?
often do they lose trap games?
Hold on, let me finish my points. Also, the Titans. We're all in love with the Titans right now. Ryan Tannehill, great story. The best quarterback in the league since Week 8, Week 9. I get it. Like, the Titans' offense is fantastic. Derrick Henry, fantastic. He's going to be tough to stop. But the Titans, they've beat cupcakes since their bye week. The Jaguars, Colts, the Raiders, a resting Texans team. And they've lost twice. They lost to the Texans. They lost to the Saints. They're very beatable. This isn't this Kansas City Chiefs we're talking about. They've allowed 56 sacks, the third most in the league. They're going up against the Patriots pass rush. Ricky, you're talking about mismatches? There's your mismatch right there. The Titans offensive line. It's garbage. They've allowed the highest opponent sack percentage in the league. And also, the Titans' field goals this year, 8 of 18 in the entire season. It's unbelievable. You're talking about a great defense like the Patriots, who's not going to give up touchdowns. They're going to force field goals. The Titans' kicking situation is the most atrocious we've seen since the 1980s. Can they make a field goal, especially when the weather's bad? I don't think they can. I think the Patriots run away with this one, and it's not even going to be close. I'm sorry.
I don't know that you can sit there and criticize the level of competition that the Titans have beaten without also mentioning the level of competition that the Patriots have beaten throughout the course of the season.
I understand, but the Patriots have beat the Bills twice. I know the Titans beat the Chiefs. That was an incredible win. But at the end of the day, this is a mismatch problem here. The offensive line against the Patriots defense. Patriots love to force turnovers. They're really good at that. And we're all falling in love with Ryan Tannehill a little bit too much here is all I'm saying. Is because he's gone up against some really bad defenses like the Jaguars, the Raiders, and the Texans twice in the last 7 weeks. Interesting.
It is the sack percentage number stood out to me, but I think it's kind of noteworthy to. I don't know. Like, I don't know how much stock I put into that. I mean, you have to put some stock into it because this is also the offensive line that is paving the way for Derrick Henry. So maybe it's a run blocking thing versus pass blocking or whatever it is. But I think Tennessee comes into this game and I think they're going to be able to run the ball. And if they're able to run the ball, that's going to set up play action. It's going to allow them to kind of move the pocket around here and there, maybe kind of hide those those issues, those deficiencies they have when it comes to pass blocking. Because you look at what the Patriots have done this season against top 15 rushers, it's not very impressive. Granted, if you broke this down for every team, they'd probably struggle with some of the best rushers, but they're allowing 5.5 yards per carry this season to those the runners in that category. That includes Nick Chubb, who ran for 131 yards on 20 carries against them. Ezekiel Elliott, 86 yards on 21 carries. Lamar Jackson somehow is in the top 15 in rushers, which is nuts on its own. But he ran for 61 yards on 16 carries. And then recently you've seen Joe Mixon, 136 yards, 25 carries. Mark Ingram had 115 yards on 15 carries in that Baltimore game. And now you've got Derrick Henry coming to town. And I mentioned the weather. The weather's going to suck. It's going to be just that awful, like, cold and rainy and it's just gross.
And you like Ryan Tannehill throwing the ball in that weather?
So my point is I don't know how much that's going to matter, and I'm not going to sit here. I would maybe sprinkle on the money line. I think the Patriots probably find a way to win this game and pull one out. I think Brady still has. If I'm still not betting against him if he gets the ball back in a tie game or down 1 or 2 late in this game, and they got to drive down the field and get a field goal. I think they find a way to make it happen, but I just think Tennessee is built well enough to make this game close and keep it close, and I think a lot of that goes down to the running game, and I think there's an opportunity for Henry to maybe break a big run. He's done that throughout his entire career, really. The Patriots tackling has been an issue lately, and they're going to scheme it up. I think they're going to be ready for it, but you don't have that extra week. It's just they're on a level playing field with everyone else coming into this one. I will say Tannehill has been absolutely atrocious at Gillette Stadium. His teams have never, his teams are 0-6. They've lost by an average 21 points, 5 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, only 61% completion percentage. But I think it's important to point out that those were the Miami Dolphins in a lot of meaningless games. So, he's probably going to give them 1 or 2 turnovers, and maybe if that's enough. But I wonder whether the Patriots can do enough with it. The offense is a huge concern right now. Brady, every time you see Brady, whether it's before the game, after the game, during the game, at practice, it seems like he's flexing that elbow. That's clearly not right, and I don't think that gets better with 1 week of a short week even in the cold. Julian Edelman is saying all the right things, but he's got just 10 catches over the last 3 games. He's clearly hobbled by that knee injury or whatever, that shoulder, who knows. I was saying earlier this week or last week, I mean, would it surprise you if he's got like a torn labrum or something he's playing through in that shoulder? And it's just a lot going against the Patriots. I think this is going to be a grind them out, close game, a field goal game either way, so I will take the point.
I just think the Patriots defense is good enough to turn touchdown drives into field goal drives, and that kicking situation in Tennessee is absolutely atrocious.
It's not going to be a fun night
that
to kick
weather,
either.
That can swing it. That can really swing it, even in a 5-point spread.
I tell you what, though, these are 2 teams that are going to be willing to put their
if you're the Titans, do you even kick field goals in this game? Do you just go for it?
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
I was going to say a lot of intestinal fortitude between these 2 teams, and I don't think Mike Vrabel in a 4th and 3 is going to be afraid to go for it from the plus, whatever. I think you're going to get. I think they're going to go for it. I think they're going to pull some. I mean, we saw last year in Nashville, they'll run a trick play against you. They're not afraid to do that. So. It's just a fascinating matchup, I think, with the familiarity and all of that. Maybe that works in the Patriots' favor.
Speaking of the trick plays, you and I, Mike, talked about this earlier.
Yes, good point. Thanks for bringing this up.
That the Patriots' offense it becomes so overly reliant on those types of plays.
On trick plays, yeah.
And it's
they've used them all now, it feels like. I'm
so
sure they have
what
something.
do you have left?
Yeah, like we were talking about the Landon Roberts. I mean, think about that. They've been using the Landon Roberts as a fullback for, 6, 7, 8 weeks now. It's worked really well, and everybody has been saying at some point he's either going to get the ball on a run or he's going to leak out of the backfield and catch a pass. And they had to use it week 17 against the Dolphins, a game that really shouldn't have ever been in question. So they've used that. They've used the throwback. They've used the flea flicker.
If anybody's going to know about throwing to a defensive player, it's going to be Mike Vrabel, right?
Right, yes.
He's going to be pretty prepared for this.
It's a good point, yeah. So, I'm sure there's something in the playbook that we haven't seen yet, but they've used a lot of it, it feels like. So, which kind of speaks to where their offense is right now. So, I don't know. It's like I said, I think that's far and away the best game of the weekend. Yeah.
One thing to back up Andre's point, though, and this is, I guess, this concerns me a little bit.
Yeah.
Bill Belichick, 11-0 when facing a quarterback making his first career playoff start.
That's kind of like a
playoff start.
Kind of like a hybrid version of the young
quarterback.
The first thing I thought of when I saw that stat was I thought Andre was going to bring that to the table, so I didn't even want to mention it.
I'm glad you did.
There was some great. Did I lose them? I might have lost them. I had something somewhere with the numbers. I saw it in the Action Network. It was great stuff in terms of the numbers for quarterbacks making their first career start in the playoffs. The numbers, as you might imagine, are not good. So that's a good point, Ricky. All right.
Yeah. Let's move on to Sunday.
Yep, let's move to Sunday. 1:05 p.m. kickoff here. The Minnesota Vikings, who got in as a wild card team, head to New Orleans to take on a dynamite Saints team that won the South fairly easily. A Saints team that really in most years probably would be looking at a first-round bye. Not fortunate enough to do that this year, but they are 7-point favorites as it stands right now against the Vikings. Everybody, 80% of the cash, 90% of the tickets on the Saints, moving that line up from 6 to 7. The total at 48.5 here. These two teams met last October. New Orleans won that game 30-20. But like I said, Saints laying 7 here. Ricky, how do you see this one unfolding?
I think the Saints are going to blow them out. I think it's a big number, obviously, when you get to this stage of the season. But I mean, how many times do I have to be fooled by Minnesota in a big spot, just laying a total egg? I think the Saints offense, with the being able to flex the running backs outside, maybe take advantage of that Eric Kendricks injury. The second level isn't quite what it's been in the past for Minnesota. Their secondary actually kind of stinks this year.
It's really bad, actually. I saw this. I wish I remember. I think it was on the Saints SB Nation blog. when a Viking corner has been targeted this season, they're allowing a 72.6 completion percentage.
Yeah.
That's insane.
That doesn't bode well when you're going up against Michael Thomas.
Exactly. You can be a big Michael Thomas
So
game.
this could be a huge Thomas game. I could just see them with, like I said, with Alvin Kamara coming out of the backfield and with Taysom Hill, what he brings to the offense. Could see maybe some communication issues in that Minnesota secondary. So I don't know. I don't know if Minnesota can stop them, to be quite honest with you. I think New Orleans is going to score a lot of points in this game. The fact that it's in New Orleans is huge. Minnesota 1-7 against the spread in their last 8 road games against teams with winning records, which kind of speaks to what I was saying earlier about them just not showing up in big spots. So I trust the Saints more. And Kirk Cousins is he takes a lot of heat, and for the most part has had a pretty good year, but again, he just sort of falters under the pressure of playing. I don't think it's necessarily the pressure of like the moment. Like I know there's a lot of stock into his Monday night record and things like that. I think it's just when he faces good teams.
He's better against bad teams.
And more or less when you're playing on Monday night, you're facing a good team. So I see him having some problems in this one as well.
Andre.
I was when I first looked at this game, I said, okay, 8 points. The Saints have been blowing out teams this year. They want some revenge for the Minnesota Miracle. And I'm like, Saints are going to blow out the team. The more I look at it, though, these two teams are so similar in so many ways when it comes to the advanced metrics. They're very similar teams. Yards per play differential, Vikings 7th, Saints 8th. Turnover differential, Saints 2nd, Vikings 5th. Sack rate, Vikings 9th, Saints 7th. Sacks allowed, Saints 3rd, Vikings 5th. They're just in the same rankings in all these major categories. And because of that, especially with Dalvin Cook coming back, he said he's going to be healthy as strong as ever. I think the Saints win the game, but 8 points is a lot. I think the Vikings keep it within the number. I know they can't win those big games. I'm not saying they're going to win, but they did keep they lost to the Packers twice, the Chiefs and the Seahawks. All those were close games. The Chiefs' loss was a 3-point game. Seahawks was a 7-point game. Packers 5-point game. The last Packer game wasn't close, but
they got smoked.
No, but the first one was close. They keep their losses close. This is a good Vikings team, especially if Dalvin Cook's healthy. That game against the Packers, the second game, Dalvin Cook wasn't healthy. I think that's a huge factor because we've talked about for 2 years now how when Dalvin Cook does well, even last year when he kind of stunk, when he did not stink last year, he took so much pressure off Kirk Cousins, and I think he has the capability of doing that even against the Saints team and keeping this one close. And again, I agree with a lot of Ricky what you're saying. The Saints have that blowout ability, but I don't know. I think the Vikings are a very strong team. They're going to keep it within that large number.
This is probably the healthiest that Minnesota's offense has been in the better part of 2-3 months.
Yeah, Dalvin Cook back this week. Alexander Mattison back. I like him. He's been a good change of pace back, or just even a secondary back in his rookie season. Thielen, I think, is a question mark. He did not look good in that Green Bay game. This one's I thought this was maybe the toughest game of the weekend. When I saw the number, I wanted to find a way to take Minnesota, especially considering you're swimming upstream here against the public, which you always kind of like. If you do the yards per play line, I've got New Orleans at -3.5. But when I do the last 3 weeks, I've got New Orleans at 8.5 points. So I'm going to lay the points here. I'm going to plug my nose and do it. I think either Minnesota covers or they get absolutely murdered. I don't think it's going to be a situation where they lose by 8 or 9, 10 points. I think if they lose by 15. And one reason I say that is I was doing some research. This is nuts. Every year and during the wild card weekend, since 1992, has had a game, at least one game, and sometimes a lot more, decided by 13 or more points. And a lot of those tend to be, there's a few 30s in there, some 25s, some 28s. So typically we see one blowout per weekend at least, and I think this has obviously the best chance of that happening. Mike Zimmer, when he came into the league, he was a great against the spread coach. A lot of value there. Recently, though, not as much. As a road favorite of 6 or more, actually, since he was hired, as a road underdog of 6 or more, he is 1-10 straight up, 5-5-1 against the spread, so that's not bad. But they've failed to cover the last 4 games with one push in there, but they've lost those games by an average of 13 points. Carl Sheffers, maybe a little bit of referee luck for the Saints this weekend of all things. Sheffers is the head referee. Since 2006, the Saints are 13-1 straight up when he refs games. So it would actually be kind of fitting if he ends up porking them here with how much issues they've had with the referees recently. I think, I do know what Minnesota probably is going to try to do. And you look at, they've got ties to Mike Shanahan here. Gary Kubiak is, I think was an offensive advisor. He spent 11 years as the offensive coordinator for Mike Shanahan. I got to imagine he's going to watch what the 49ers did. What they laid 48 on the Saints a couple weeks ago. A lot of, that run game, getting that run game going and then going into play action, setting that up. That worked for the 49ers. I just wonder, probably the 49ers a little bit better than the Vikings are. And I think one thing is it's going to come down to scoring first. And you go back and look at the first 8 games of the season, a lot of those with Teddy Bridgewater at quarterback. The Saints scored 0 first drive points in their first 8 games of the season. Their final 8 games of the season, 37 first drive points, 4 touchdowns, 3 field goals. There is a punt mixed in there. Over the last 3 weeks of the season, they averaged 22 points in the first half. They're doing a much better job of starting fast. I think that's going to be huge in this game, which is a roundabout way of saying I think the play action and the run game and all that kind of gets neutralized if Saints come out and score first. I think they're going to come out jacked up, ready to go.
So you're taking the Saints?
Yeah. Because I was laying out what I was doing there, Andre, is laying out how the Vikings can keep this close. But I think that the Saints will do enough early in this game to make the Saints have to play catch-up. And that's just not a team that's really built to do that, I don't think.
I mean, they came back from a 23-0 deficit to the Broncos, but that was against the Broncos.
Right, and that was at home, not in the playoffs. So, yeah, I mean, that's a good point. But if you watch that game, and I was watching that game because of the playoff implications and stuff for the Packers, a lot of blown coverages by the Broncos. It wasn't like, Cousins just willed them back into that game. So I don't think you're going to have the same thing if they fall behind here. If they get down 14, early in this one, it's going to turn into 30 real quick. And I think Peyton's the kind of guy who's not going to take his foot off the gas either.
I will say this was the most difficult one for me to pick. I went with the Vikings. It's a lot of points, but yeah. I do understand your guys' points as well.
Okay, let's go late Sunday afternoon.
Cordial way to wrap
that
up.
Yeah, no kidding. I don't know. Would you say the late Sunday afternoon is the marquee game? Was that the end, or is it with the Saturday night game?
I gotta take the Saturday night.
Okay, well, because
who knows?
This game doesn't do a whole lot for me.
This game sucks.
Yeah, I agree.
This game sucks.
But we got the Battle of the Birds, baby. We got the Seahawks coming. What are they? They are a wild card team. They go on the road to take on the Eagles, who won the NFC least. Get that? Ooh. That's a good joke. 4:40 p.m. kick. Total at 46 here. That's probably the second highest of the weekend, I think. Everybody, the public, is hammering the Seahawks. 83% of the cash, 80% of the tickets. The line opened at Philly -3. The line opened at Philly -3. Is now down to Philly getting 2 at home. Weather doesn't seem to be a big issue. This is a rematch of Week 12 game in Philly, actually, that Seattle won 17-9. Ricky, who do you like here?
I mean, how do you make sense of this game? It's basically
flip a coin, I guess.
It's just 2 teams that have just been decimated by injuries all season. Crushed. So it's a matter of finding who's maybe slightly healthier. I don't know. It's just, for me, part of it comes down to the quarterback position. And I know Carson Wentz he's been great, really, for the better part of a month or so.
Yep.
And I mean, actually, he's been good all season, but it's just more extensive of a track record there when it comes to Russell Wilson. So I could just see a situation where, I mean, if there's one thing I don't trust in this game, I still have questions about that Eagles secondary. So I could see a situation where, he takes some deep shots down the field. Maybe late in the game they get away with a pass interference penalty or something that sort of sets them up to win on the road. So I'm taking the Seahawks. The fact that there is so much money coming in on them, it gives me somewhat pause. Right. But again, I think the Brandon Brooks injury for Philadelphia is another one that, I mean, really they're just piling up, but that's a huge one because I think that Seattle is going to be able to get some interior pressure.
Does sound like Lane Johnson will be back, though, for the first time in a while.
And we've seen how much of a difference that can make. But, I'm taking Seattle. It's just, again, like I said, it's tough to make heads or tails of this one. I will say, though, that the Eagles winning streak to close out the season might be the most uninspiring winning streak I've ever seen.
Well, it's 4 wins in a row to end the season, all against divisional teams, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, but 3 against the Giants and Redskins.
Right, yes. No, that's
2
my
of
point.
which, bad teams obviously,
Yeah.
2 of which they trail in the fourth quarter, so.
Their last loss was at Miami, just to put that in perspective,
There you go,
too.
too.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. See, I think this was the toughest game to get a read on.
Yeah, I
but
agree.
I'm leaning
This
Seattle.
is a tough one, too. Andre?
I was going to go with the Seahawks because of much of the same reasons Ricky said. Russell Wilson, trust him more. Eagles kind of stink. Both teams stink. I'll take the better quarterback, but I'm going to go with the Eagles because I think both quarterbacks at this rate, they're kind of equal. Like, Can we say that? Like Carson Wentz, 7 touchdowns, no picks in his last 4 games. Russell Wilson, he's been sacked more than any other quarterback this year. That offensive line isn't doing him any favors. Yeah, sure, he's the better quarterback on paper, but when you don't have an offensive line, you're running for your life on the road in Philly, it basically balances out the quarterback position. So the next thing I'm looking at is Miles Sanders, who's been unbelievable in the last 6 games. 444 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 195 receiving yards. And that Seattle rush defense allows nearly 5 yards per carry. I think that's going to be the difference in this game. I think Miles Sanders goes off, and the Eagles eat some clock. Russell Wilson on the road with a decimated team, like no running game. In that game where the Eagles played the Seahawks, Rashad Penny had a huge game. He ran over 100 yards. Obviously, he's not playing. They have Marshawn Lynch now, the ghost of Marshawn Lynch. It seems like I don't see him being a huge factor in this one. They're going to take the Eagles, especially since they're going to be at home. If you take these 2 teams in nature, Seahawk versus an Eagle, you take the Eagle, right? So, especially if it's in the Eagle's nest. Seahawk isn't going to come do anything there, so I'm going to take the Eagles.
Very well said. Yeah, I'm going to take the Eagles as well. It feels good to be on the right side of the public here. It's just, that is, I don't know. That is a lot of...
It's a big swing.
Yeah,
that
no
is
kidding.
a huge swing.
So one thing I saw on the Action Network that I thought was interesting, when you have these situations where teams are rematching later in the season or in the playoffs, this is since 2003. The team that won the first game and is favored in the rematch is 24-36-1 against the spread. They are 40-21 straight up, so maybe that kind of negates the whole thing considering the spread is so small. But I like that trend here. Speaking of trends, Doug Peterson as an underdog in the playoffs, 4-1 straight up, 5-0 against the spread. That was their whole thing on that run to the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. The injuries across the board. The Brandon Brooks one hurts, and it looks like Zach Ertz might not be able to go as well. But Jalen Mills, cornerback, he says there's no doubt he'll play after missing Week 17. Jordan Howard's off the injury report completely first time since Week 9. And also Lane Johnson will give them some support up front on the offensive line as well. Speaking of that, Dwayne Brown, the Seahawks left tackle, doesn't sound like he's going to be able to go, which makes this even more difficult task of stopping that pass rush. And it's Andre's point, if the Seahawks don't have any sort of run game to speak of, it feels like that just makes you really one-dimensional. I mean, we've seen Russell Wilson do it time and time again, but it's got to catch up with them at some point, right? It's hard to imagine he can continue to do this with so much adverse conditions and so much going against them. And I also think to Andre's point as well, Philly's gonna be able to run the ball. Seattle's run defense 26th ranked according to DVOA per Football Outsiders. So you can run the Seahawks, and I think the Eagles' best option is to try to do that as much as they can. I think they'll be able to find some success. It just feels like 2 things that they do really well is rush the passer, and run the football. And it feels like this matchup is set up well for them to do both of those things. So I don't know. It is a tough one to figure out.
I think this is going to be probably the tightest game of the weekend. I mean, it seems like both of these teams, especially Seattle this year, it never gets blown out, never blows anybody out.
Yeah.
You can pretty much set your watch to it that it's going to be about a 3-point game or so.
If you want to talk about that, and the Eagles are kind of that way in a lot of ways too.
Yeah, Seattle. They also seem to be unfazed by playing on the road. Only 1 road loss this year.
Yeah.
So I don't anticipate them coming in and just being overwhelmed for whatever reason. So I think this is going to be, we're looking at probably a 3-point max in this one.
Yeah. I mean, I was just looking at you. Look at that. Like the Eagles. That game against the Patriots, I feel like they just got worked. They ended up losing that by a touchdown. They hang around. I don't know how either. It makes no sense.
Yeah, none of it does. This game doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't. It's probably not going to be very entertaining either. It's just my point is that this is a weird game to stick on the end of the weekend, but what are you going to do?
Maybe that will be a good time, Mike, to take down the Christmas decorations instead of watch this game.
I already did that, my friend. Way ahead of you. Yeah, I get that out of there as soon as possible. I get the winter depression starts kicking in real fast. No, I mean, if I could, I would. I get that stuff out of there. Let's get back to normal as quickly as possible and start setting our sights on spring and summer. So hopefully it'll be here before.
Maybe that's what we should open.
Training starts soon.
Yeah, good point.
How long is it appropriate to keep up your holiday decor?
Yeah, I mean, do it as long as you want, I guess. But like divisional weekend, probably if you want to use it as
it's a good barometer.
Yeah. If it's still up,
if you got to start questioning
Saturday,
which holiday the lights are up for, maybe that's
it's probably been up too long.
That's a telltale sign.
Yeah, Martin Luther King Day is the
that's probably the cutoff point. Martin Luther King Day.
Well, I'm glad we established that.
We solved a lot today.
We did. Anything else, guys?
No, I'm ready to go.
All right.
Hey, it's gonna be great to have you back in the office soon.
I miss you guys.
Feeling is
I had a medical emergency. I made it. Things are good.
Great.
Battling through. You're on the Seahawks-Eagles injury report.
All right. Good night.
See you later. All right, that's the spread. NESN.com's Football Picks podcast for the wild card weekend. We will be back again next week. And if you need these picks in written form, go to NESN.com/odds. See you again next week. Later.